Marshall.
Hi, Bridget. This episode,
We're going to talk about
what are the things that are going on in our lives?
it's kind of like maybe this might be like,
Yeah, sorta, kinda.
life lesson.
hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Twinsies.
Exactly. We didn't plan this at all, y'all. Not in the slightest. I
We
just
did
said
not
y'all.
plan it.
Oh, I'm
Y'all
Marshall.
sometimes. I'm Bridget.
This is Yeah, Sorta Kinda.
And welcome back. Happy Wednesday if you're one of those people that just really like to jump on board with your subscriptions. Thank you. Hi.
On the Wednesday
Yeah.
tip. Yes, hello. How are you guys?
Hi.
I have it.
Oh, yep.
What do you have?
I do have coffee tonight. I have
What
no
is it?
drama llama. No.
Cheers. I have my
Cheers.
owls.
We both chose animals. We both are wearing yellow. I decided to don a hat today because I'm not too pleased with what's going on with my hair.
I'm like, whatever. Curl. Put some headphones on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes it's the headphones to cover all sins, and sometimes it's the hat.
I love hats. I'm a hat girl.
I'm a big
I gotta
fan.
admit.
I'm a big fan of hats and boots, and
I like fall clothes. This is a side note here, people. We're just having a moment.
Just have a
I
moment.
like the fall. I like
I'm
the
a
fall.
big fan. That's actually one of the things I miss most about moving out of Seattle. It's
I
that
bet.
beautiful fall weather and the opportunity to layer clothing without being overheated.
Yeah, St. Louis was the same. I like sweaters. I like boots. I like coats. I like jackets. I like a scarf. You know, you gotta do it like that.
Accessorize with those layers.
Yeah.
But that's not why we're here.
No, I was gonna say, well,
tonight.
yeah. Yeah, we are here to do part 2 of our near-death experiences.
That being said, if you have not listened to part 1 of our near-death experiences, I
Going
would
home.
say go do that now. Why not? Look, do
Sequential
whatever
order.
you want. Do whatever you want. But maybe it'll make a little more sense if you do that one first.
Have some
It
ice
is part
cream.
1.
Part 1. Ice cream, Chardonnay, coffee, whatever you want.
Chardonnay
Dig in.
ice cream. Do they make wine-flavored ice cream? That sounds
Oh, I'm
weird,
sure
but I
somebody
feel
does.
like
I'm
that exists.
I'm sure somebody out there does. What do you
Ice
want to
cream.
do? What do you want to do? Ice cream.
Yeah, well, what I want to do is I want to have some ice cream now, Marshall.
I know. Just eating a pint of Haagen-Dazs while we're doing the show.
Wait,
I'd be all right with that.
what's your favorite flavor?
I love mint chocolate chip. I love pistachio. And I love good old chocolate swirl, like a chocolate ribbon. I don't know if Haagen-Dazs has
Fudgy
that.
one. I think I'm a fan of like a cookie dough.
That is my favorite yogurt pop is cookie dough.
Cookie dough yogurt pop? Never
Eating
had a
cookie dough
yogurt
is
pop.
like I could eat a whole bowl of cookie dough raw. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I think I'm going to need to find my motivation for clean eating again.
Oh, I didn't know where that was going.
This conversation is any indication of where I'm at with that right now. I have a ways to go. Sugar is a major addiction for me, so I'm kind of back on the sugar. Like there's a little sugar in this coffee, and I'm like, sugar in my coffee. Sorry, if you're not watching on YouTube, you missed my very unattractive dance.
She did a shimmy. I was about to do one of those. How did that go? How did that go, Bridget? And she can read.
Sugar.
That was funny. You got to watch it just for that. That second one was awesome.
You don't.
Oh, I just hit my teeth. Did you guys ever do that? I just hit my teeth on the mug. I'm like,
That is the very reason why my metal straw has this nice silicone tip on it. Is
Yeah.
because I tend to hit my teeth. So this helps
just so you know.
keep these chompers intact. I think we're gonna focus now.
Yeah. It was like a sugar bend.
But thank you for going on this little journey with us. Sometimes the road to death is a winding one.
God only knows what this episode's going to be like. You got buckle up.
Yeah, we have
Literally
no
grab
idea what's
something
going to
to
happen.
We don't.
Last week we left off with No, but we said we and we do. We have another viewer experience, and we have another listener near-death experience that wrote in that we're going to share with you. And that's Polly, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Part of why we wanted to do a 2-part series on this is because there's a lot of information, and a lot of what people describe happening are these really beautiful, just like these peaceful experiences that make death not seem so scary. Matter of fact, don't seem scary at all. It like emphasizes how natural it is, how profoundly loving and beautiful, and kind of sounds like going home is kind of what we're referring to it as last time. But there's also lots of other people who have experiences that are really terrifying, and those don't get talked about as much. Maybe they don't get as experienced as much. Maybe they do, right? Maybe people have them just as often, but they don't talk about them as much. I don't know. But we are going to talk a little bit about that, just because I think it's important to examine both sides, right?
It's the yin and yang. It's the positive and the negative. You can't have one without the other. I was watching Oprah. It was kind of fun to go back and watch some of the old Oprah episodes. Like, this is like pre-Oprah, like what we know her now as. And she had some really cool episodes about near death and experiences. And she said she thought that almost as many people, maybe not the same amount, but a lot of people did have near-death experience. I mean, the negative, the distressing,
right?
Distressing near-death experiences. I think that's the technical term. But they just didn't talk about it because they didn't want to be judged. They were afraid to acknowledge that happened, to say it. But also they would be judged because people automatically go into that, well, what did you do? What kind of life are you living? Do you know? And I would venture to say that just because you're having you had a negative experience, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. What was interesting was a lot of the people who had, and we'll go into some of those negative experiences and the stages, the different stages that they call it, or categorize it as. But it seems that like a lot of people that have the positive experiences would get depressed when they would come back because it was so loving. It was so different than it is here. There was such peace that some people would get truly depressed afterwards, after they'd processed it. Some people would try to kill themselves just to go back, which, you know, I understand, I suppose, but at the same time, you're kind of negating the second chance, you know, that you're given. But a lot of the people who had the scary experiences, they changed completely. Like, that was it. Like, okay.
Like, it set them on the right path, kind of, if you will.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking some people had a more negative experience to get them back on track. Maybe they were just, it's not that they were a bad person, although this one lady was saying, well, you know, it's not that I was a bad person. I was just very self-centered and selfish in some ways. And she was like kind of describing all this very self-centered behavior. This is during the Oprah thing. Oprah's like, well, what do you think is a bad person? And it was kind of funny, honestly. Maybe you had to be there. But it was kind of like, And she's like, because that's kind of that's not necessarily good. And the girl herself had said she did try to kill herself. That's why she was in the hospital. And she'd overdosed. So she's in the bed and they're at the hospital and they're trying to like resuscitate her. They're doing all these things, but she's kind of going in and out of consciousness. And she was starting to scream, saying that she saw demons all around her bed. And the doctor's like, no, that's just the drugs. And she's like, I'm hoping it's just the drugs. And she was like, but she just kept seeing these faces. They looked like they were melting. And then afterwards, I guess something happened. But then she did go somewhere and all of those things were around. It's like they were just waiting for her. She was in the dark and they were just waiting for her. And there's this like, and so, but then she started praying and she was never one to do that. And then she woke up and she swore that she would change her life. And she woke up back in her body like that. And she's like, I changed my life. You know, basically, I changed my life.
Listening to you tell me that, I cannot believe I forgot. I actually have a family member who had an NDE, and it was a distressing one.
Really?
Yes, and they never went into a lot of detail about it. But I cannot believe we're in our part 2 of this, and I'm just now remembering, because at the very least I could have reached out maybe and gotten a little more information if, like, say they wanted to be anonymous. But I always got the sense they didn't want to talk about it, that it was a traumatic one. And I think when I heard a little whisper from them about it even happening, it was a little confusing for me because I had only heard of the really positive ones. So I was like, similar to the story you were just telling, I heard a little blip from a lady. I don't remember exactly what her death, the reason for her death was. I don't know. Oh no, it was a suicide attempt, and it involved a gun. And she said that there were these small beings around her, and that they were filling, like, they were cutting holes in her body and filling it with, like, feces and vomit and, like, really vile things, like in her eye sockets and in every orifice, and just really terrible. But I'm wondering, Marshall, like, how many of these really negative, distressing experiences are related to people who attempted suicide? Is that like is that a theme here? I don't know. I would need to do a lot more research. I don't want to make an assumption here, but I am starting to see a correlation, though, and maybe that, I don't know, that's interesting to me, because I feel like we've mentioned a few and we say, oh, and they were attempting suicide. So I don't know. That's just
I would think maybe that's just to scare you, you know, or show you, you know, because they always talk about choice. Every single one of them says you have a choice, but you have a choice here too in how you live. You know, that is the common theme that everyone who comes back says. The negative experiences, there was this atheist professor. Let me see if there's a lot of people had them in childbirth when they were giving birth to their children, to their child.
See, I don't think I had ever heard of that before. I did not know that was a phenomenon that was happening.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Amazing.
I didn't either that there was a lot of near death. But the examples that I have of the void, which is why don't we just go through? Why don't we just go through? Let's start with that.
The 3, like, categories. Yeah, the inverse, the void, and the hellish are the 3 types of distressing NDEs. Whereas, like, the positive ones tend to convey universal messages of, like, compassion and often cross, like, religious and philosophical beliefs from all around the world. The distressing ones typically follow the pattern of suffering, death, and resurrection. So, I mean, to give you, like, the briefest overview of inverse is perceived as hostile or threatening. The void is perceived as, like, this vast emptiness with, like, devastating scenarios of being alone, being isolated, like pitch blackness, deep empty space, dark abyss, sometimes a dark tunnel. And then the least common is actually the hellish, where it's like falling into the depths of the earth, perceiving the gates of hell a lot of times, or like these like rusty gates, desolate landscapes, groups of wandering spirits that look lost and in pain. I remember reading one about somebody they were with a guide and they were like, you cannot help them. It wasn't just you can't help them because they can't be helped. It's like you are not allowed to help them.
Yeah, I read that one too.
Malevolent beings. Here's one that's more of a specific example of hellish, and then I'm done on this. A woman who attempted suicide felt her body sliding downward in a cold, dark, watery environment. She says, when I reached the bottom, it resembled the entrance to a cave with what looked like webs hanging. I heard cries, wails, moans, and the gnashing of teeth. I saw these beings that resembled humans, with the shape of a head and body, but they were ugly and grotesque. They were frightening and sounded like they were tormented in agony. That don't sound fun.
No. There was, an atheist professor. I'm trying to see. He was having surgery, I believe, is what happened, and died during surgery. But they brought him back. Yeah, he had an intestinal rupture, and that's what happened. He experienced being maliciously pinched, then torn apart by malevolent beings, just like ripped apart, and it was so visceral. So it stayed, but he completely changed his life. He left the university and started attending a seminary because there was such a feeling of grace that saved him that it just changed his life. What I was going to say about what the things that they saw or they felt, I do think there is some sort of negative place. I mean, you can even look at that in a positive, scientific, positive, negative. You know, you can't have one, the yin yang, that whole thing.
You could even look at it as even what we see on our own earth right now. You don't even have to think of it in a multi-dimensional way. It's like
Absolutely.
There's both suffering and blissful joy in this human experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As above, so below. Like, it makes sense to me that you'd see that from like when we're energetic beings after this human life, that we would have the contrast of the good and the bad.
Yeah. And maybe some people just need to know that both exist. Mm-hmm. Maybe some people are more stubborn, and whatever this universe, this divine intelligence, whatever it is that you know, a creator, great spirit, whatever, knows that.
I'm just saying, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Knows that we're stubborn, you know, and sometimes you have to see. It's like Scared Straight when you take a kid to prison to see, this is, if you continue on this path, this is what's going to happen to you.
You know, what stood out to me is when you mentioned he felt the grace. So this atheist man had with the rupture. Oh, that sounds terrible.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. He saw this hellish place, but then he felt this grace.
Yeah.
And isn't that such a theme here, is the contrast of the suffering and the joy? Like, I feel like I keep saying this, but I think it's because it's really so significant to our experience as a human. Also, I'm sorry I say the word experience so much. I was listening to part 1 and was like, I want to have another word in my repertoire other than experience, but I'm that's the thing about talking about this. I feel like we are really limited with what words we have available to describe all this stuff, because it's otherworldly. Like, it really is, you know. I don't know. It's hard to put a finger on it.
Yeah, you're tapping into, I think you're being allowed to see a truth of the universe, of the world. I think there are certain universal laws that just, you know, I guess, you know, and so it's your choice once you see that, and I say that all the time. There's my repeat, but it seems to be the theme in every single topic, and we don't even know. We're not looking for that, but when we read this stuff with remote viewing, with what was it, shadow people, even with the takeaway,
the themes that are throughout whatever topic we choose, that even though the topics seem like they're miles apart,
completely random, you know, just that we're interested in. It all comes down to there's a spiritual world and a physical world, and you have choice in how you live your life, and if you choose to see what is really going on in the world. And, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, when people would talk about these, this is what I thought was sad. I was actually very touched by in some ways. A lot of people, and I get it, this is why we're doing what we're doing. When you try to, you're excited. You just had this experience, in quotes. I'm putting it in air quotes for those of you listening. Using
what else can
Bridget's
we call
World.
it?
I know, but what else do you call it? So you just had this event. This thing just happened to you that you felt so viscerally in every single way, and it moved you, and you feel it on a cellular level. It is in your bones. This is true. I cannot deny this. So you're excited. So you want to go share this with somebody, and you just get this deer in the headlights look back at you, and you're like, I think it makes them question you.
Yeah.
And that's not fair.
I'm reliving it right now as you're talking about it, going through an experience of not being believed by something that for me was life altering. Not only was I not believed, it was like undermined, and my sanity was questioned, and I was it's such a vulnerable thing to want to share, but it's also such a precious thing when you feel the universal consciousness and this love and this oneness, and you just want to be able to share it with people so that they can also, because it's like a relief. It's that grace. It's like you feel you can't move through life the same, and so you want other people to have an understanding of that, and you want to somehow say the right words so that they'll realize, like, you know, that on the other side of all this there's like beauty, and it's beyond what we can we can tap into it here, but it's really so beyond that. So not only are you being met with skepticism about that even existing, you're then being questioned as an individual, like, how could you possibly know what you're talking about? And it's just like, wow, how do we even know each other anymore, this person and I?
They look at you differently. Then you become this different, like, maybe they have all this history with you, and they see you as this intelligent, grounded, sincere, but then you try to share something like that with them, and you're automatically just put into a completely different category.
And on the other side of that, I can't help but look at them differently, because we're no longer vibrating in the same place. We can no longer talk about the same things. Like, that to me those are when the world, the paths, maybe you're walking along a path with somebody and you see, like, oh, our paths are veering away from each other.
Yeah.
If I stay true to what I know, then we may not, like, this may be the end of the road for us, you know?
Yeah. And oftentimes it is.
It is, yeah. We've talked a lot about is how some friendships fall away.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I remember being a teenager, you know, in high school, and wanting to share something with a couple of friends about, because we were talking about ghosts and, you know, things like that, or whatever it was, or maybe just like where you have that kind of sixth sense where you know something's going to happen. I don't know. I don't really remember. But I remember trying to share some experience, and it's a vulnerable place. We've talked about that. Yeah. But you feel like you trust this person, you love this person as a friend, you know, like you guys have each other's backs, and then you share that in a moment of true reaching out. Yeah. Like in a magical way, and then they almost use it against you. Yeah. Do you know? Sure. Or there's whispers 100%. Behind your back or whatever. And this is you know what I mean? Oh yeah. And one of the and that's another reason why we want to do this, because of all those years of keeping it to ourselves, you know, knowing that you can't talk to people about it. Well, we're here for you to talk about it, because even if we don't know what it is, let's go find it out. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just how I look at it. And to say, you know, you're not alone, it makes you feel so alone. Yeah. That you can't share this. And one of the men that I was listening to just before, I think I'm still processing it. It was such a beautiful experience. He died as a child. He had some sort of, I think he was abused, honestly, and it ruptured an organ. I think he was like 8 years old, and so they had to have surgery. And he died. And they did bring him back, and I don't know how long, it was a little bit. It was like 8 minutes, you know, something like that. But he was shown, it was this beautiful light, it was the grace. He felt a sense of the Divine Mother, which I've always thought, you know, I grew up Catholic. I've always thought Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, I always thought of as being the Divine Mother, basically. That's just me. So me too. I mean, it just, you know, and I knew that as a kid. I always thought that as a kid, and CCD class was not fun for me. It was not how it was being taught, but that's how I saw it. That's just what made sense to me. But what about mom? That's what I would say. You know, I'm like, well, what about? And my teachers never enjoyed those moments with me in class, but whatever. But he had this sense of her, and then he was shown his whole life. He was shown events that would happen throughout his life, going to Vietnam, going to meeting his wife, and it helped him, he said later, fast forward to these events actually happening throughout a 50-year span of his life. He would have like this deja vu feeling, and he would know which way to go. There was an instance when he was in Vietnam, and they're being told, they're in a helicopter, they're being told to shoot these people down below, and all of a sudden he just had this really strong deja vu, and he was like, I don't feel right about this. I'm not going to do this. And he defied, you're not supposed to do that when you're a soldier. And he was like, no. And he's like, I'll court-martial you. I'll do all of this stuff. And then, so they turned it around. They turned the helicopter around. So the other guy on the other side, the gunner, could shoot the people down below. And the guy's like, I'm not doing it. I've known the guy, I can't remember the guy's name. Let's call him Scott. Scott, for 10, I've been working with him forever. And if he says no, I'm going to follow this. And this guy's like, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, go around one more time. And if those people have guns, if they're meant to, then we'll do what we're told. But if they're not, if they're children, then you're going to thank me. They turned back around, went down really close. It was a priest with 9 little kids with hoes and shovels going out to dig a garden. And it's giving me the chills to tell that story. And he said if he hadn't had that vision, basically, if that wasn't shown to him, he would have probably followed orders, because that's what a soldier does. Right. And he said what he learned, this is a side note here, but he learned you have to go out with love in your heart. You can't hate your enemy, because they're doing what they're supposed to do too. They're doing what they're told to do as well. He was saying that's the difference with war. It's not even that war is bad. It's the hate that people go into it with, because you're going to have arguments. It's like you can't go in there and just blindly kill everyone. You can't go in there and, this is just what he said. I'm just quoting him, so no mean letters. But I'm not for war either. But I understand what he's saying. They're human beings too. It's like the Civil War here in America, in the whatever year that was, I can't think of it now, 1800s. Brother were fighting brothers sometimes. Cousins were fighting cousins. Best friends. You have to look at life like that. But
with love,
he said, the love. And he said, but he saw all of those things also, all of that happened to him as a child. And his mother, luckily, was someone who understood that. So he would talk to her about these things. And again, she was like, be cautious. Let's not tell your dad about this, but it helped him in life. And what he said, what he got out of all of this was to listen to your children. If they say they hear something or they're seeing something, I know I had an imaginary friend that I would swear to this day I was really talking to, that there was someone there that I was talking to. Then as I got older, it went away. But and I saw things, but he's saying a lot of children, because they're closer to the source, as you and I say, they are truly open and magical. Their hearts aren't closed.
Hearts, and also the logic, and a lot of it's cultural, like this Western view, because there's cultures around the world that can incorporate the other side and do, but this Western culture, this very scientific-minded, logical way of viewing the world, which is not, I'm not saying is all bad and all wrong.
No.
But if that's your view exclusively, imagine being a child, coming into the world, being your own being, trying to make sense of everything you're being told and you're experiencing, but you're having these experiences that aren't fitting what you're being taught is okay. You eventually, like, that stuff will fade. And how amazing would it be if, as parents to our children, we could actually really, really allow this little being to unfold to whoever they're supposed to be, as opposed to what we want to make them, these little versions of ourselves, and learn from them. Because, look, we've lost touch as we've gotten older, a lot of us, for all those reasons just listed. And so if we can listen to these children and really, I mean, yes, there's still going to be imagination, but there is really something to what a lot of these children are experiencing. And maybe for some of you, it's as simple as thinking back to when you were a child and remembering your experiences and all the things you wrote off or all the things you heard, like, we don't talk about that. You know?
That's what he said. The being told of that's not possible.
That. Right.
We don't talk about that. That's not logical. That's not, or being beat on the other side of that because you're seeing something.
It's like what we were saying just a little bit earlier about friendships, and like wanting to share experience, or not just relationships, wanting to share something as an adult that you experience and then being discounted. But how many of us do that to every kid? You know?
Yeah, that was something that really, I could always talk to my mom. I would talk to my dad about some things, My dad kind of always had a bit of a sixth sense when he was in Vietnam that helped him to know when someone was around the corner. Like he freely, I don't know if he would admit it now, but growing up I would hear him talk about that. I think it's there when you need it sometimes. Maybe in times of stress like that, it comes out even more. I think the world is supposed to be a combination of science and spirituality.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't think there's supposed to be this division. There's so much division in the world as there is. I think it's meant to be combined. And that's where a lot of the hatred and the fear and jealousy mankind is not doing that well right now. They're not, I'd say the majority of the hate, people are just thriving in that.
Yeah, the us and them mentality is dangerous.
Yeah.
Cue the cat feeder. On that note.
Yeah, maybe.
Is it time for Polly?
I was going to say, why don't we go into Polly's and then we can talk some more about...
So, I guess... So, Polly, she's a listener, and she essentially emailed us an experience... Well, it's kind of a twofer.
Yeah.
A two-parter experience that she had. So, and I'm just going to read it. I'm going to do my best to make this compelling for you all. Because it is. It is. Let me rephrase this. The story is compelling. I'm going to do my best to honor it. Okay.
Justice.
So here we go. Here's Polly's NDE. It was 9 degrees that night. I was having a bad few days. I took my meds and walked out the back door to a field I was familiar with and just laid down. It was beautiful. I wasn't cold anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had no anxiety. I felt so at peace and rested like I never felt. In my peace, I was wrapped in this 8-inch thick pastel pink-like blanket with a fabric that is unlike anything in this world. It wasn't a softness you could touch. It was a softness you could feel. I could see a couple small little animals around me, like cute little ones, kittens, bunnies, rabbits, little birds, those kind of sweet creatures which brought me extra comfort and love. Again, not like here. There was no grass, there was no sky, there were no trees. It was all just pastel colors, all the spectrum of light, but soft, bright light that didn't hurt your sight. I was still wrapped loosely in the blanket. The feeling was divine. I can't tell how long I was there or where I was, but the time frame was from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. that I was missing from my home. Search and rescue were called because it was 9 degrees that night, and I was gone for 5 hours. Unlike me in that kind of weather, especially without my car, my phone, keys, money, and cards. Anyway, of all things, a police canine finds me unconscious, cold, with hypothermia, with a body temperature of 90 degrees, and with all my meds in me. Then, slam! I was out of my safe place. It was like I was on a train going fast, looking at the windows. Black, white, black, white, black, white. And the black was black, and the white was white. That's the only time I saw any kind of white light was on that train, and it was pretty bright as it was black. Woke up about 3 days later, coming out of ICU into a regular hospital bed. I didn't sleep for 9 days after that. I was driving the night staff crazy. I guess it was that last day I went to stand and completely collapsed. I remember that. They told me later they had to call a code blue. No breathing, no heartbeat. I said, "What? Couldn't you guys hear me telling you to stop banging on my chest? You're hurting me, over and over." Then there's Shannon, the RN, a tiny little lady with a huge engagement ring on her finger, breaking my damn ribs. I yelled, "You all need to stand back, I can't breathe." The doctor, 3 nurses, and therapists were around me. Mind you, I'm laying on the floor where they found me. They put me in an ambulance, getting ready to be shipped off to some other hospital. I wake up terrified, hanging onto the paramedic's arm, telling him, "I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling." He said, "No, you're not, you're okay." Now I was scared. When I got to talk to the doctors and nurses after the second ambulance rush, they told me what happened. I said, "No, didn't you hear me? I was sitting right here telling you to stop. Stop pounding on my chest, it hurt." She said, "No, you were a code blue. You were unconscious and not breathing with no pulse." I told her what she was wearing, the names of the 3 nurses and the therapist, Joe, and exactly where they were standing in that hospital room. Now, she was from Pakistan with that beautiful brown skin tone. Her face turned snow white and that jaw dropped. I have no time frame on this one, but it was a different experience. The room was like a hazy white, and I seemed to be clear, transparent-like, but they were as solid as everything else in the room. But me, I just felt a lot of pressure on my chest, but I didn't feel anything like the first experience. When I went home, the police officer came over to see me. Of course, I had no clue who he was. He said, "You look like a different person than when I saw you the night that you weren't breathing. You had no pulse," he said. He did CPR, and to thank his canine partner for finding me. And Polly goes on to say that she never fully recovered, but that she's good.
Yeah, and she did. I asked her some more questions about, did anything change after that experience?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people talk about coming back with psychic abilities, you could say, or a renewed sense of hope, or they would be depressed, like we said, or their lives completely changed. And she said that she now has a deeper feeling of self-peace, and that she'd always had a deep connection with nature and animals, but now it's like part of her life, the way that she lives her life. She said she wouldn't say that she's like a psychic medium, but she definitely has more of a sense of vibration. And some of us are more sensitive to the vibrations and energies of light and life. And there are so many different kinds of vibrations and energies out there. And now they're just like completely magnified, and she tries to embrace it. And she'd never really shared any of it until now. And she thanked us for listening.
Yeah, I get the sense that, and again, back to kind of what we were saying at the beginning, people are sitting on these experiences, these really profound, life-changing moments, and they so rarely find someone to talk to about them, and to, because it's like you want to, whenever you go through something, whether it's like crazy or exciting or beautiful or whatever, don't you just kind of want to process it? You want to bounce it off with somebody, and you want them to like get into it with you too and be like, "Oh my gosh, and what was this like?" and to ask questions. And I got the sense that nobody's ever really asked her about it. You know, that maybe she's mentioned it, but nobody's really like tried to like tell me more about this experience. Like, what happened? What did you feel like afterwards? And that being said, if there's anybody out there listening that wants to share their experience, that's okay. If you bump the mic, I can fix that. I'll really fix it in post. If there's anybody out there that has an experience like this they want to share, please let us know. Please email us, yeahsortakinda@gmail.com. As you heard in part 1, Danny sent a voice recording. As you heard in part 2, we read Polly's email. We want to hear these experiences, and so we're happy to revisit this topic.
Yes. For
sure. Because I also think there's people that need to hear what you went through. There are tons of people that really need to hear your story.
Yeah. It's, again, knowing you're not alone. There are other people out there, or we've had people have experiences to show you this.
You didn't go through it for no reason,
Yeah. That's what I was just about. That's what
I
I was
know.
getting to.
I knew you were. I love that.
We all have these experiences for a reason. So instead of brushing it under the rug, and that's one of the common things that people do after this experience, is they explain it away. They just, it was just the chemicals. It was just, I was imagining things or whatever. And as Danny and Brinkley said, the man we spoke about in the last episode, he said, some people are experiencing the chemical releases and the oxygen. And he's like, but a lot of people aren't. And he's like, those are the people that need to speak out and to understand. And I guess it's just realizing that, like we did with the way we look at life, not everybody's going to agree with you, and that's okay. You are going to lose friends, but you're also going to find a world out there of people, or just a small group of people, who believe the way you do, or at least understand, or will give you a chance to speak, to be a voice. We all have to find our own voice and to speak about what we know, I think.
And it can feel lonely at times. I get that. Been there. That's why I'm so incredibly grateful to have found Marshall, because, it's just, I don't really know how much longer I could have handled living life with all of this stuff just like built up in my brain and my body, and trying to just, seek somebody out there I could talk to about this stuff.
Yeah. And then fast forward, like you say, now we're doing a podcast. Like, we're like, don't talk about it.
Yeah,
don't
we
talk
went
about this
from
stuff.
like, okay, this is just between us two. Hello, world.
Hey, guys, how's
Let's
it going?
talk about NDEs.
Have you seen Demons? Yeah. Cheers to that. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yes.
Gotta laugh, people, or you end up in a corner in a fetal position crying. So that's how I look at life, pretty much.
There was one other thing I kind of want to say, which
Please
is, so, NDEs, we're talking about death. We're talking about life after death. I believe in it. I believe that our loved ones are still around us, loving on us, watching over us. I also believe in life before life. I believe that, we choose to come into these lives. And I have decided not to talk about the details of my experience that I referred to in part 1, because I don't feel like I'm in a place where I can really do it justice. I need to spend more time with it to reflect on how to really put it to words, to see if I can even put it to words. Yeah. But at some point, I would love it if I feel so inspired to share that with you, but it's like, it seems so out there. It really does. But I will, the biggest hint, the biggest clue I'm going to give you right now is that I have very good reason to believe in life before life. So we'll just leave it there.
No. What's interesting is listening to you talk, like you said, before we got on here, I was telling you something that I'd read, and that all of a sudden triggered something in you. You remembered something. And
yes,
like when I was listening to Danny's in part 1, I remembered it's amazing the things we can bury in our own minds.
Yes.
With the experiences that we've had. I remembered waking up in a bathtub and drugs were involved. I was young, stupid. You think you're invulnerable. You don't think anything of it. I'm like, yeah, sure, that looks fun. Wake up in a I couldn't breathe at first. Wake up in a bathtub, with cold water and ice. And I don't think that I died, but I think that I said I was going to talk about this in the last one.
Yeah.
I think that I had an experience, though, to use your word. And what I remember the most
to use
about
the fucking only word.
I don't know what else to put it. I don't know
what else to call it.
But it was definitely what I remember about it was this sense, not like my dad, but it was like a voice that you will not argue with. You know what I mean? And it was like it was annoyed with me, and it was almost like, what? Get it together, basically, is what it was like a parental sort of like, what are you doing? Snap out of it. Come on. And I woke up, and then, I got some fresh air, went on a walk, and was like doing all this stuff. And it took about 3 months after that maybe not even that long, and I quit drugs altogether. And so I can see that as being, I think that why people experience the good things and the bad things. Why are we seeing these things? And it doesn't even have to be a near-death experience. That's probably why you're using the word too, because it's called experience. But just, give you a little break there.
And to differentiate it from like a memory, it's a felt experience. That's
Or a
something you're
dream.
living through. Yeah,
Right.
It's not just like something that you're imagining. So that's part of why.
I think that we forget who we are the older we get, like the spiritual aspects of ourselves, of who we truly are, because this is just a physical form. As we said, energy can, and this is scientific, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It just can be channeled. And we are these light beings. We are these...
Or transformed, right?
Yeah. It, you threw me off that. But we forget who we are on a soul level. And I think that these experiences happen to remind you. And then it's your choice. Am I going to embrace this? And that's scary because you're going to lose people along the way. It's inevitable. People sometimes aren't going to believe you, even your closest friends. It could even be a family member.
And it's scary because you can't prove it.
Yeah, you cannot prove it. And that's the whole thing.
You have to take my word for it, Mm-hmm. And unless you've experienced something similar, like how do you... You really have to trust that I'm somebody who's grounded enough, who has critical thinking skills, who can really, that you can trust that I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I don't have a PhD in NDEs, y'all.
No. But it's like we said, we're not, we are grounded people. We're way more skeptical than you think, than the way we come across, because we both think there's a lot of bullshit out there, but... It's just time to 45 minutes. It's time to start talking about it. It's time to be a place of shared knowledge with people and love and friendship and guidance if needed, or guide each other through it. What would you say?
I just think, exactly that. It's, I am ready to find more people who talk about the same things that we do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know they're out there. Or maybe they don't talk about them, but they think about them.
Yeah.
And I realize, here's one thing about this show, and I was saying this to Marshall before we started recording, I was like, there's going to be a lot of people in our existing circle. Mm-hmm. We just have to accept that they're not going to be interested in this. Yeah. They're not going to know what to think of this side of us. And that's okay, because that means this isn't for them.
Yeah.
The people that this is for are very likely, a lot of them are up until now complete strangers. Now, there are a lot of you that do know us from real life who are like on board with us. Thank you. That's really cool. Because I feel like that's where I feel the most vulnerable, is people who I already know in real life and being like, hi, did you know this about me?
Did you hear the shadow people one? Yeah.
Or, hey, Mom, don't listen to the shadow people one. Exactly. She's like, oh, I wasn't. I'm like, I know.
But it's how do you, it's like with the near-death experiences and everything that we talk about from season 1, how do you have all of this experience, and then how do you know it's real, and how do you live in this life now? How do you work your way through? How do you incorporate
it's
that?
Messy.
Yeah, and how do you...
It's trial and error.
So... That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, you have to prioritize. It's kind of a rhetorical question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It
is a rhetorical question.
You do it moment by moment, one day at a time sometimes. You fail at it sometimes, and other days you're a freaking monk. Like, it's just... some days it's like everything's beautiful and you feel super zen, and then the next day you're flipping off you're having a road rage moment. Like, it's messy. Life is messy.
Or you don't want to talk to people. You feel yourself going within your shell, and that's okay. That's okay. That reminded me, just for some reason I want to say that.
Please.
Especially with like what's going on right now, we're being forced to isolate.
Yeah.
So when you have those moments where you feel sensitive, you don't really want to be around other energy or around other people, or it's sacred. Protect yourself. Protect whatever it is starting to kind of bubble up within you, and allow yourself to go down that road. Yes.
But also, you're never truly alone.
No.
You're really not. Marshall reminds me of that all the time. And if you want to think of that as your loved ones around you that have passed on or what, that's up to you how to interpret that. But I take great comfort from knowing that I am so universally loved. And it's kind of ties back into that grace that we were talking about earlier. Like there is this grace and this peace, and it's ever present. And sometimes it's just a matter of allowing ourselves to feel it. And sometimes it's at its loudest when we're in the biggest state of suffering. That's when that, like the grace that you mentioned from specifically that man going through that hellish, terrible NDE, but then he felt that grace, and then he came back to life, and then came back to life, and came back to life.
Literally came back to life.
And changed his life. We can do that moment by moment. And it's kind
That's
of
why you talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why it's just more examples of there is something more to our physical world. This isn't all there is. And we can talk about that till we're blue in the face. It's like I say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Did you make that up?
No.
I'm teasing. I'm sorry. She's having such a good moment. I had to make a stupid joke. Please continue. I'm sorry.
I don't remember what I was saying. But that's all right.
You do. It's about, we can't convince you. We can only get you to think about it. We can only lead a horse to water and make him drink.
Yeah, you can just sit there and think about it. But it's in those moments of silence. Like, stop making yourself so busy. Stop watching TV all the time and not thinking to drown it out. Stop drinking so much if you're drinking too much. Stop partying so much if you're partying so much. Stop making yourself, I have to go over here, I have to go over there, I have to go meet well, we can't really right now. But let's say...
Yeah. Question FOMO. Question that. That fear of missing out.
Because you are not listening to that little still voice within you that is trying to tell you there's more. I think all the answers are within you, but you have to sit in that silence and allow yourself to hear it. That's what I have to say.
I think that's a great place I think that's a great place, Marshall, to end it.
I think
on that
so
note. I love that.
So, you guys, that was part 2.
Yeah. And then some. Real quick shout out, Polly, Danny, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And like I've mentioned a few times, if anybody else wants to tell us about, it's not just limited to NDEs. It can be about anything we've ever talked about.
Any sort of supernatural or something new.
Something you think we should cover.
Yeah.
We're really open-minded. We're not here to judge you. We would love to hear more of your experiences. And we think the listeners, you guys, you that have the stories and you guys that want to hear them, let's bring it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, and hello and thank you to all the new followers and listeners. That's pretty amazing. So you guys will be back next Wednesday. Like, subscribe, whatever it is you're watching. Write us a review.
I wish we could tell you what exactly we're going to talk about next week, but we haven't decided.
We haven't decided. There's a lot of... We might have a guest. I don't know. There's a lot. Or might dive back into the subconscious a little bit. I don't know. Or secret societies.
We're really just trying to listen to our own kind of instincts and what's pulling on our heartstrings at any given moment. And then we also want to make sure we're in sync with each other on the same topic. And so far, that's been panning out really well for us. So we're just going to keep trusting that. Sometimes we'll be able to give you a heads up what we're talking about, and other times it's just going to be like, we'll know in 3 days before we record, like, here's what we should do.
Yeah, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So on that note, I guess.
On that note, Marshall, hey.
I was going to say, leave a review, leave a 5-star review, because we're going to do some giveaways. I have some Viper stuff I could give away.
Oh.
Yeah,
so
leave a review.
Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. But what if they don't have Apple Podcasts? Some of our Android friends.
Oh, they can't do it that way. You could do it
Well, then I guess you're missing out.
You could do it on Stitcher or Spotify or iHeartRadio or...
I think go ahead and stick with your original plan of the Apple Podcasts 5-star reviews.
But let us know. Email us. that you put it up there, I guess,
There you
in case we don't see it. And that'll be like a little raffle.
But also follow us on Instagram, because that's an almost easier way for us to also do giveaways. So we'll have other things for you too. It's okay to have an exclusive Apple Podcasts review giveaway.
Exactly,
We can do that.
Exactly. We could do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right. We'll
All right,
figure it
Miss
out.
Yellow mellow.
I know,
Mellow
right?
Yellow.
Theme of the day.
What?
Yellow.
All right, you guys. Mwah.
All right. Mwah, mwah,
Till next
mwah, mwah. Okay. Bye.